everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brittany. This is the Brittany React Show. And on this show today we are actually reviewing The Wild Robot. This is a movie you guys know I've been looking forward to for a really long time. I've talked about it a lot on my channel and all of our, basically almost every live stream we've had for the past couple of weeks, because I was really looking forward to this movie. It's Dreamwork's latest movie. Dreamworks is pretty hit and miss. They're not always great, but when they do hit it out of the park, they really hit it out of the park. And I felt like The Wild Robot is one of those movies. I would say The Wild Robot is easily one of DreamWorks' best movies. I can safely, confidently say that now. I really think it's one of the best movies of the year, at least of the movies that I've seen, and I've seen quite a few at this point. I reviewed a lot of them, and I really think it's up there in possibly my top 3 for the year. Is it better than Inside Out 2, which you guys know is my #1 film of the year? We'll talk about it. I don't know if I'm ready to say that yet, but we are going to discuss what I love so much about this movie and would I recommend it to you guys and all of that. But I do want to say hi to you guys first. Hi Cheetah Viper, hi Natanya, hi to Boy, hi Gray for Harmony, hi Professor Strangefinger, hi Natanya, hi Josh, hi Alexander, hi Vincent, hi Someone, hi Arvin, and thank you to each and every one of you who is here. I deeply appreciate you guys always being here and showing up for my live streams, so I have a lovely audience to talk about these movies with, because I love doing that. Can you everyone hear me all right? I do have my AC on. If it's too loud, please let me know and I will turn it off. So just let me know in the chat if you want me to turn it off and I'll do it. Anyway, let's get into the review. I am going to set up what the movie's about, but I'm actually going to try not to spoil what happens in the very end, just because I want you guys to actually see it, and I'm sure there's a lot of you in my chat who has actually not seen it yet. So, going to give you the general premise of the movie and some of the key characters, but I'm not going to spoil the ending and everything that happens in the third act. So that's how this review is going to go. Alright, let's go to the review. So, like I said, really thoroughly enjoyed this one. I had high expectations, to be honest, just because I feel like, at least for my own personal taste, I feel like when I see a trailer for something, I can immediately know whether or not I'm probably going to like the movie just based off the trailer. Occasionally something can surprise me, like Alien Romulus surprised me. You know, it does happen where I'm like, oh wow, this was much better than the trailer suggested, but just based off the trailer, I just had a gut feeling that this was going to be something special, and I'm so glad I was right, because, well, let's get into why I liked it. Alexander Padilla, thank you so much for the super chat. Is The Wild Robot up there with The Prince of Egypt, the best DreamWorks movie of all time? There's only even a handful of movies, period, animation-wise, I guess, that I would put up there with The Prince of Egypt. This is a very good movie, but The Prince of Egypt is a high bar. I don't know if I would say Prince of Egypt yet, but I would say it's got some of those same feels, those same vibes. It really hits you in the heart, which is what I like about this movie. But I don't know, Prince of Egypt is I consider The Prince of Egypt to be a masterpiece. So that's a high bar. But anyway, let's get into the review. Josh says Transformers 1 made a huge mistake competing against The Wild Robot, as it got destroyed just in its second weekend. Yeah, it did. I don't know why. I feel like Paramount's release schedule has been weird. Why would they release their animated film right before a DreamWorks movie? That doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, they should have seen this coming. But maybe they didn't think this movie would be a big hit. And so far, word of mouth is actually propelling this movie to do well. So I'm really happy about that. Alright, moving on. So what is this movie about? Like I said, I just want to give you the general setup, the premise. So the movie starts out with the robot, whose name is Roz, and she finds herself kind of washed up on some rocks, and she doesn't really know like why she's there. She keeps looking around trying to see like the whole purpose of the robot that she is, like her unit of robots, is that they're supposed to be helper robots, that they do tasks for people. So Roz starts going around like asking all these animals like, hey, do you need help? Does anyone need help? Like basically trying to find her owner, which propels her to go into the wilds, which is where we begin our adventure. So we have this wild robot who's lost at sea, basically, who is not in his I keep saying his, but it's her. She's not in her element. She's like, I don't know why I'm here. What is my purpose? I'm supposed to be a helper robot, but there's no one here who wants my help. And that's kind of like how this movie starts off. And while she's looking around trying to find someone that could be her owner, she runs into like a lot of the animals who do not like her. They're like, oh, you're a monster, you're an outsider, you're not supposed to be here. And through all of this mess that she gets herself into, she ends up discovering this lone little egg that she just decides that she's going to take care of because she accidentally killed the whole family. She and running away from the bear, she falls on these eggs and all of them die except for one. So she now feels a sense of responsibility to take care of this egg. So that really is the setup. The setup is now we have this wild robot lost in the woods, and she has decided to take care of this little chick who is, I mean, it's not a chick, it's a gosling, I guess. And it's so adorable. Their relationship is so cute. I love how heartfelt this movie is. I really love how like it wears its heart on its sleeve. I've talked about this a lot in like previous videos that I've made, where I don't like movies that are super cynical and they can't allow themselves to be earnest. This is not that kind of movie. This movie is like, yeah, we're gonna go sentimental, yeah, we're gonna go like for the heartstrings, and you're gonna like it. Like, this movie is very, very much like, it'll constantly like yank on your tear ducts. And I don't mean that in a way like this movie is very sad. I wouldn't say this movie is sad. It's more like just so heartfelt and emotional that it makes you want to cry, like almost happy tears. Like, I haven't seen a movie in a long time that was so like emotional and heartfelt that like I wanted to cry happy tears. And I wanted to do that a couple of times in this movie. It's not like it's all just at the end or anything. Like, there are several moments in this movie that are just so dang sweet because this robot cares so much about this gosling. And then the robot really takes her role now as this gosling's mother really seriously. And not only does she decide to take care of this little baby, but she also makes friends with another fox, and they actually form this like newfound family. And even though like the other animals don't like Roz, she still like tries to do her best and like just always doing what she thinks is right. And like, I think why this movie really touches me is because I feel like so much of the world is just so like bleak right now, and I feel like people are just generally getting meaner, like society is just getting meaner. And I find that this movie is like a nice antidote for that. Like, no matter what this robot went through, and she went through a lot, she never gave up. Her goal was to raise this gosling into a full adult, and not just raise this gosling, but also make sure that he could fly, so that by the time winter came, he could like fly with his flock and like actually be with his kind. So a large part of the movie is like just him trying to raise this goose, and also trying to get him to fly so that he could be one with his people, because the gosling is a runt. So he has like shorter wings. Kind of think like Nemo from Finding Nemo, like that's kind of how he is. And it's just very, very sweet, very, very kind. A lot of the voice acting is also really great. Lupuita Nyongo plays Roz, And she does a great job. Like, really, really great job. And the visuals, as you can see, are so gorgeous. I really like this animation style a lot. I think it fits the story, but I also think it was just, like, very, like eye candy to watch. Like, it's a very vibrant movie, which I liked a lot. Any questions on the story so far? Jen says this is the best movie ever. I do think it's one of my favorites of the year, for sure. Vincent Hull says this fox reminds me about Robin Hood. The fox actually, I liked the fox a lot. The fox actually reminded me of the fox from Zootopia. Kind of had like a similar personality. Morbid says, agreed. Oh, you're talking to someone else. Yeah, so some of you have already seen this movie, and I'm seeing a lot of people say you really liked it as well. Yeah, very, very kind, sweet movie. And of course, her relationship with the other animals evolves, and she ends up in a lot of like harrowing situations, just trying to like take care of this gosling, but also take care of the island where everyone lives. And it's just like, even though she keeps getting hit back and like having all these setbacks, and like, you know, there are a lot of times where she could have just like quit or like left. Like, there's actually a way for her to signal the company that made her so that they can come and get her, but she decides to stay on purpose, override her own programming, just so she can take care of these animals. And it's just, it's a very heartwarming, like, inspiring story, I feel. And that's why it really touched me, and I think that's why it's really touching a lot of people. Like I said, this is like a nice dose of authenticity and just sincereness in a world that's becoming very cynical and cold. And like, I just feel like we need more really charming movies like this. Like, this movie gives me the same feels as like an old school Disney movie. Do you know what I mean? Like an Alice in Wonderland, like that kind of charming old school feel. Like, that's the vibe of this movie, and I really dug it. Like, I really, really dug it. Jen says you cried almost the middle and at the end. Yeah, there's several moments in this movie where it really, like, it was starting to get me, because I was just like, oh, I'm feeling so many emotions. Again, it's not even like sad emotions. Like, I guess there are some points in this movie where you could feel sad, but it's not even like a real sadness. It's more like a wistful reflectiveness. That's kind of how I would feel it. Or that's how I would describe it. Like, it's the kind of movie where it's gonna make you think about your own, like, relationships and stuff like that. And it's just, I mean, you could see it on the robot's face, and the animation is so well done that, like, you can, even though Roz is a robot, like, I just felt like I understood every emotion she felt. And yes, she does feel emotions, and it's really nice. I liked it a lot. Vin Conspicuous says, I watched both trailers, and the second one seems like it gave away major plot point. Is that true? Well, I'm not giving away the third act, as I said. We haven't even gotten to the third act, so don't worry. This is still more like just overview of what the story is. Madonna's Plastic Surgery says, just bought my ticket, gonna see it. Oh, I'm so glad, Madonna. I really hope you enjoy the movie. Alexander says, out of Inside Out 2, Flo and the Wild Robot, which movie do you see winning Best Animated Feature? That's a great question, Alexander. Because there's also Flo coming out. If you guys have been watching my news series, you know what I'm talking about when I talk about Flo. And the animation style kind of reminds me of the Wild Robot a little bit. And that's also getting great reviews. That's a great question. It's probably going to be Inside Out 2, just because, unfortunately, the people who vote for Oscars don't always watch the animated features, and Inside Out 2 is the most well-known. So Inside Out 2 is probably going to win, even though I do think it deserves to win. It's very good. But, like, if the Wild Robot somehow won, I would not be upset about that, even though you guys know how much I love Inside Out 2. Like, that's how good the Wild Robot is. Even if it lost the Oscar, or, sorry, even if it won the Oscar and, like, Inside Out 2 lost, I would actually be okay with that, because I do think it deserves it. Yeah, Madonna, I hope the animators weren't overworked. It seems like we keep getting that with animated movies lately. Like, we'll hear about how like, basically things were terrible for the animators behind the scenes, and how that there was always crunch time and they have like no time to do all of this work. I really hope we don't start hearing all those stories about this movie. That would really suck. Josh says, oh yeah, Chris Sanders, the director who worked on this movie, used to work on Disney before he went to DreamWorks. So I don't know, I feel like Disney Animation and Pixar have both lost a lot of their key talent over the last few years, particularly over the last 10. And I think maybe that's why we're seeing some of the quality start to dip over at Pixar and Disney Animation, you know, Inside Out 2 aside. Because yeah, this movie was directed by someone who used to work for Pixar, but now they don't. Now they work for DreamWorks, and they're making stuff like this. So yeah, that's not good for Disney. Not good at all. But like I said, very vivid colors, warm tones. I love how like I feel like both the writers and the animators must have spent a lot of time watching nature documentaries or just doing a lot of research. I could even see a scenario where maybe they actually went into the woods themselves to like live sketch things, because one of the things I really like about this movie is how like it kind of shows how the food chain works. Like they make it very clear, especially in the beginning of the story, that like everyone's just out to eat each other, and that's what makes this sort of a dangerous environment for Roz to be in. And like I love how this movie really worked with scale, how from even the small like the movie would zoom in on the ground and you would see what was happening with the crabs and like, you know, the fish and the otters and stuff. But then it would also zoom out and you would see what's happening with the bears and the moose and all of the other bigger animals. And I just liked how it showed how, I guess, the circle of life was all connected, and I felt like they made this island full of animals really pop. And it just felt like a very real lived-in space by the end of the movie, because we had gotten to know all these, we didn't just get to know all these animals, but we also got to know like their relationships with all the other animals. And there was a lot of talk about like predators versus prey and like can they get along, and it's just a really, really good message about like putting aside your differences to work together and like for the greater good of something bigger than yourself. Like this is just a really good message we need right now. Like we really need a message like this in today's society, which is why I think it's like hitting home with people so much, or at least that's why it hit home with me. Again, I don't think I've seen a movie recently where I wanted to cry, not because I was sad, but because I was so charmed. Like, that's how I would describe this movie. Very, very, like, just a great vibe. Like, I would say this is a movie for people, not just for little kids, even though I think little kids would like this movie. It would keep their attention. It's very appropriate for them. But also, I think this is a good movie for adults, too. And in fact, when I was in the theater, I was actually looking around, and I saw mostly adults in my theater. I actually would be very interested in knowing what the age, like the average age was of the person who saw this movie, because I would not be surprised if this movie actually skewed a bit older, because I think that there's, even though I think kids would really like this movie and it would also be good for them, I do think that this is like a kind of movie that has a message that adults really need to hear, that I think adults would really gravitate towards even more so than kids. So I really think this is a movie for all ages. I don't think this is just a family movie or just a kid movie. I would really say this is like a movie for all ages. Just really, really well done. Tight script, great animation. I love the message. Just really great story overall. Loved it a lot. And I loved it so much that I'm actually gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Yup. That's how much I liked this movie. A 9 out of 10. The only reason I didn't give it like a full 10 out of 10 was something that happens in the third act that I don't want to spoil too much, but I kind of felt like something happened twice, and I felt like that was a little weird. But other than that, I really didn't have much complaints with this movie. I definitely want to watch it again when it's, available on digital. I'll probably watch it there. Really, really good stuff. Will definitely probably end up in my top 5 by the end of the year, unless there's like 5 other great movies that come out later this year, which maybe there will, but I don't know. This is going to be hard to beat. I would put The Wild Robot up there with I think this is better than Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. The last Puss in Boots movie, I would say this is better than that. I would. And I really thought that movie was good. I would say this is up there with dang. I would say this is better than The Croods. You know what? I would put this up there with How to Train Your Dragon. That's a good equivalent as far as how good I think this movie is. I think it's as good as How to Train Your Dragon. If you like How to Train Your Dragon, I think you'll like this. Yeah. And it's directed by the same guy, by the way. The same guy that directed How to Train Your Dragon directed this. So, DreamWorks just need to keep him and get him directing everything because he's really good. But anyway, people who have seen this movie, what do you think of it? What rating would you give it? Professor Strangefinger gives this a 9. Oh no, you're saying mine is crazy. Someone says you'll give it a 9.5. Vincent gives it a 10. Someone gives it a 10. Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard of anyone who's seen this movie that regrets it. In fact, the woman next to me, oh god, I sat next to a woman in the theater who was very vocal, and I guess because I don't know if she was just that loud or if it was because she was sitting next to me that I was just hearing all her commentary, but this woman was in tears at the end of the movie, right? And she was like, this movie sucks, how did it do this to me? She was really in her emotions, right? And as I was leaving the theater, I just anecdotally I heard a lot of people being like, oh, that was good, I like that. You know a movie's good when the movie's over and you can just kind of feel the vibe in the crowd. When I saw Godzilla -1, if you guys remember when I told you in my review that I had never been in an audience where I felt like the audience was impressed. My audience for Godzilla -1 was like, oh, this is good. I kind of felt the same way about this movie. I got similar vibes where I could tell my audience was really enjoying the film. And I like that. I like that a lot. Drawing art gives it a 10. Okay. Jordan, yes, I know better than Puss in Boots 2 is a bold statement, but I think it's better. Drawing art says 10 out of 10, better than Inside Out. Okay, here's why I'm not sure if I would put it above Inside Out 2 yet. Maybe I put them on the same level. Honestly, I like them both, but for different reasons. I would say for Inside Out 2, it has a much more complex story, which I think is more impressive because they're able to nail a really complex story in that one. And this movie has a very simple story. This movie is a lot more about character development than it is about a very complex plot. So for that kind of reason, I think I give the edge to Inside Out 2 because I think they achieved more. But both movies are very, very good. Like I said, if either one of these movies won Best Animated Feature at the Oscars, I would not complain. I think they're both worthy. I really do. Josh Loves Movie says, I think DreamWorks Animation and Sony Pictures Animation and Paramount Animation is proving that stylized animation is the future for animation. Yes, I do. I really hope you're right, Josh. I genuinely hope you're right. I think another thing that I really liked about this movie is the animation. I liked that it kind of looks like of, I would say, maybe like watercolors. Like maybe, I don't know, the background was always just so vivid and lush, and like I like how bright the colors were, but I also like how soft the brush strokes were. Like you could see it was like, even if you look at the background here, look at the grass. Like the grass almost looks like you could see someone like hand painting the grass, you know what I mean? Like I love how much texture is in this movie. I think, compare this, even just this shot here, to something like Wish, which that animation was just like super bland and super flat and had like no detail. This movie is like the opposite of Wish, where every frame there's like a wealth of detail to look at, and I really appreciated that. I just love the texture in this movie a lot. Madonna. Vincent says, Disney won't create this art style for the upcoming movies. Oh, I wish they would. I really wish they would. I wish Disney would take a chance and do something different. And I know that's going to be hard, and the reason why it would particularly be hard at a place like Pixar, for example, is because Pixar already has, like, a pipeline that they've had in place for decades at this point. And that pipeline involves like a certain animation style that they're very, very much used to and known for. So for Pixar to try to do a different style, and they are starting to experiment a little bit, but I still feel like they're holding back a bit. And the reason for that could be just because I think trying to do a new art style like this would require a whole new pipeline, which would require like possibly reorganizing the company. That's my theory anyway. At least I know the whole pipeline part is true. That's not a theory. But like as far as why they won't go like full hog with like a new art style, I think it's because for them, they've been doing one art style for so long, it would require a lot of changes to the company and how they make movies in order to do that. But I really think it's worth it. I think they should put in the effort. I think they should still try to do something with 2D. I would love if they brought back 2D. I already told you guys, I think, a couple of times that like when they tried to do that 2D sequence for the Mary Poppins movie, the new one that came out a couple of years ago, they had to hire old Disney animators because no one that currently worked at the company knew how to do that 2D animation style anymore. The 2D animation style that Disney made famous. No one that currently worked for the company knew how to do it, so they had to hire retired animators just to do that like 5-minute segment of the movie. That's how sad things are at Disney as far as 2D goes, but yeah. And that it also like proves my theory kind of true, I think, that like in order for Disney and Pixar to try to really experiment with new styles right now, not only would they have to like find a new pipeline, but they would also probably have to hire new artists who actually know how to do different art styles. Because Pixar has been the standard for so long, or at least was the standard, that a lot of animators, when they go to college for animation, they are literally taught the Pixar style. Like, animators are taught how to do the traditional Pixar style because for so long that was the standard. So you have all of these graduates who just learned how to do the Pixar style, and maybe, you know, they're now working at Pixar, and now you have to like find animators who can do other things. I mean, DreamWorks outsources a lot of their work, so does Sony. And I'm hearing rumors that Disney is considering doing the same. And as much as that sucks, and it would be bad for like American animators, I almost wonder if it would be worth it to try at least for one movie, just to see if like you can get some new perspective, some new talent, maybe to try something new for Disney. Maybe that's also part of the secret for like Sony and Illumination and DreamWorks right now, is that they're outsourcing a lot of their work. I know Disney's been considering it. I think it might be worth it to try for like at least one movie to see how it turns out, just to try to get some new blood in there. But yeah, that's just a theory potentially. Michael SD64 says, Disney needs to get rid of the live-action remakes. We could have gotten a 4th animated Lion King film with this art style. I really think Disney needs to go back and, like, work on their art style. I really do. I really think Disney needs to focus on animation again, because right now they're too reliant. Both Pixar and Disney Animation are too reliant on sequels. The fact that they struggle with getting originals to connect with people is a problem. And to be honest, the originals that they have coming out soon with like that, what is that astronaut kid movie? And then that, what was it? That beaver movie that we talked about? Like, those are both original movies, but the premise of them, they kind of suck. Like, who wants to see that, you know, what life is like with the mind of a beaver? Like, this is what I mean when I say, like, they need some new talent in there, because I don't know how that even got greenlit. But yeah. Arvin says, I want fairy tale. Oh yes, more fairy tales! Can we get more, like, traditional fairy tales? The 2010s, I think for good reason, try to turn, like, Disney fairy tale tropes on its head and try to do something different. Like, and then this all really started with Tangled, where you had, you know, Rapunzel, who was much more of a wild child and didn't like to wear, you know, heels. She just liked to go flat foot and barefoot. And she was much more of like a free thinker, which was different for a Disney princess at the time. And then they did that again with Frozen, where they didn't focus on any sort of love story, and it was much more about the sisters and the power of family. And I think those were all good decisions, and I'm glad that they decided to do something a little different with the typical fairy tale, like, tropes and all of that. But I do think that they have gotten so far from what Disney was originally known for with their fairy tales that I feel like they kind of need to go back. Like, they were trying to do that with Wish. That was their attempt at going back to doing like a traditional fairy tale. But it sucked so bad that I feel like that was not a good representation of that. You know what I think they really need to do? Again, using Frozen and Tangled as an example, they need to go back to like using literature as their basis. Both Tangled and Frozen are based off of books or older stories that they just adapted. I really think they need to go back and find like an old Brothers Grimm fairy tale and try to bring that back to life using 2D animation that's actually really good and not that in-between flat crap that was in Wish. Like, if they did that, I think that would do probably really, really well. That's what I would want to see anyway. Du Bois says, sorry. You know what I was talking about, Jordan. Du Bois says, that's the thing about subverting tropes. If all you do is subvert them, what was previously fresh just becomes a trope. Exactly! That's why I think people are really starting to get tired of the whole, like, adorkable princess. Because, if you guys remember, because, again, Rapunzel herself I would call adorkable, right? But that was new at the time. That's why Rapunzel stood out, because she wasn't like this prim proper princess that we'd come to, you know, expect. But now everyone's adorkable. Even Asha from Wish still had basically Rapunzel's exact personality. She was still that adorkable, you know, princess. And I'm like, you guys have got to get away from that. All of those, you know, tropes that you guys try to get away from, well, now you've made new tropes. And you got to get away from those. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. Josh Loves Movie says Warner Brothers Pictures Animation is doing Bad Fairies and the Lunar Chronicles, which is a futuristic take on classic fairy tales. Oh, I love that. One of the reasons why I really liked the movie Nimona was because it kind of blends fantasy with sci-fi, and I would love to see more movies and shows play with that, because I think that's a really cool, like, intersection. I would love to see more of that. Really curious to see how Moana does later on. Like, I know people really love it because it does really well on Disney Plus, but like, maybe it's just me, but I still don't really feel like a whole lot of excitement for it. But maybe I'm just, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Morbid says, I miss the Cinderella princess stories. I do too. I honestly feel like also part of the problem is that, like, they're afraid of making a princess that needs to be saved because, like, you know, social standards have evolved. And while it's great to have princesses that can really kick ass and do their own thing, like, I also still want a princess that, you know, is okay with romance and, like, finds a partner. I don't think that's a bad thing or makes them a weak character. I would love a princess who maybe still does some bad things and does need to be saved every now and then. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that, like, that automatically just means that they're a bad character or a bad princess. But I think Disney's probably afraid of, like, going against some of the social progress we've made, and I think that's probably also it. Vincent Hole says, Disney needs to make movies with mature themes again. I agree. I feel like a lot of their movies, other than Inside Out, recently, have been quite shallow. And this is not something that I would describe The Wild Robot as at all. Like, I feel like the themes are very deep and meaningful, especially for the world today. I would not describe this movie as shallow at all. I think there's a lot to digest in this movie, for sure. Alright, I'm going to answer a few more questions, and then that'll be it for today. Thank you all for coming and enjoying me, or just, you know, being part of my live stream to talk about this movie. I think you could tell how much I really liked it. Morbid says, and Cinderella was a strong female too. She literally escaped abuse with the help of her friends and found love in the process. Exactly! That's why, like, the whole reason why Disney decided to start flipping their tropes was because there was this whole movement about how, like, Cinderella was really just this weak character and a bad example for women. And I'm like, I kind of disagree with that. And not just Cinderella, but a lot of the princesses. Like Ariel, for example. I feel like that viewpoint kind of takes away a lot of the agency the characters did have, because Cinderella did fight back. And during the pandemic, like during the lockdown, I decided I was going to watch, like, all the Disney princess movies in order. And it was the first time that I had watched a lot of the movies in a long time, including Cinderella, like, since I was a kid. And something that really stood out to me about the Cinderella movie was the fact that Cinderella had an attitude. Like, so much of how Cinderella is portrayed now is, like, as this, like, prim, proper, dainty person, and that was sort of part of her character, like, especially when she was at the ball. But when she was cleaning and, like, basically being a slave for her stepmother, Cinderella was sassy. She had an attitude. Like, she talked back. Like, I was actually surprised rewatching that movie, because I was like, I had already had it in my head, like, that long narrative about, like, how bad these characters are for girls, and I'm like, this is not the Cinderella that I remembered. Like, I actually feel like she had more agency than people give her credit for. But anyway, I even feel like Cinderella had more sass and personality than Asha from Wish. I actually think Cinderella had more agency than Asha from Wish. Like, go back and rewatch that movie. You will be surprised like I was. Morbid agrees, she was very witty. Yeah. Du Bois says, might be a hot take, but going off how Cinderella had an attitude, I'd love to see a Disney princess with a super sassy attitude. I would love that too. I think that would be really fun. I think they kind of tried to have that with Raya, but Raya didn't really do well, and I think that was so far removed from the Disney princess, like, model that I don't even think people even consider that movie a Disney princess movie, even though it technically is. But yeah. Evil Connor says Cinderella's one of the funnier princesses. Yeah, she's funny too. Like, I was, like, watching this movie like, wait, I've been lied to about Cinderella. She's a cool character. Denisha says, honestly, the Me Too movement was part of the not letting men save the princess trope. when the Me Too movement was popular, some tropes in film shifted. That was the start of the girl boss. Yeah, the girl boss issue is, I think, a problem too. I think that's why some of their characters, especially their female characters, are like not as interesting. Even, this is not even just a Disney Animation or Pixar problem. This is like I think it's all the whole industry actually, but let's just stick with Disney. Like Marvel has that problem. They want to turn all their well, I think they're fixing it now. I want to say I do think that Marvel is fixing it now. But for a minute there, they wanted to make all their female characters girl bosses, and it drove me crazy. I'm like, we have different personalities. We're not all the same. I mean, I get it came from like a good place, but again, the execution was not right, and I think it also hurt a lot of the movies and the stories in the movies too. Michael SD64 says, we need to have people that are passionate about stories and have beliefs that these artists feel in their heart. Otherwise, it's not going to be content. It's going to be content, not art with meaning. Yeah, fully agree. You can tell this movie, The Wild Robot, was made by someone who really had a lot of passion for the story, and it shows. I always feel that when you are genuinely passionate about something, it shows. And when you're not, it shows. So this one, I could tell this director was locked in. Like, he was on it. Evil Connor says, nah, this started way before Me Too. This whole perspective came from a clickbait article in the early 2000s. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I do think this is something that has been growing since, like, the early 2010s, in my opinion. But I do think that maybe Disney is aware of these complaints, because so many people have made them. We'll see if they actually like course correct and change these things. But anyway, that's my review of The Wild Robot. We kind of got off course and started talking about like animation in general and Disney, but we had a good conversation. This was a lot of fun. I really love this movie. I wish Disney had made this movie. I feel like if Disney had made this movie, not only would it have done even better, even though it's actually doing really well at the box office currently, but I actually think if Disney made this movie, it probably would have done even better, just because it's Disney's name and they could have marketed better. And I feel like this would have been possibly another Disney classic, and they haven't really had like a lot of classics that they've been making recently, and I feel like this could have been one, like an original classic, not a sequel or based on anything. Like, well, it's based on a book, but it's not a sequel. That's what I'm saying. This could have been like a huge Disney classic for them. And again, also proves my theory correct that Disney needs to go back to like getting their stories from books. Because unfortunately, I do not trust the talent involved over there to come up with their own good original stories. Because the original stories we've been getting have not been that great, in my opinion. And I don't think any of the original movies coming out in the future even look that good. So, yeah, I think they need to go back to the drawing board, go back to tradition, and like look at the old myths and fairy tales and just adapt those. That's what I would tell Disney to do. But anyway, that's the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching my review. I will be doing an entire news stream on Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as usual, so please make sure you're here for Thursday. Please make sure you like this video. It does help share this video to more people. And yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys being here.